Welcome back. It's time to take a look at the headlines this morning. You are watching the news review on Power Breakfast right here on Citizen TV with me, Fred Indimuli. Ruto CS in battle for the soul of Kenyatta National Hospital. That's a big one on the Daily Nation this morning. This is a discussion that has continued the entire week since that blunder when the brain surgery mix-up happened and the consequent suspension of the 4 workers of the hospital as well as a CEO. And that has resulted in a lot of things, including a push for the impeachment of the CS by MPs. Rate cap to go after Uhuru yields to IMF. This is another big one on the Standard. Kenya's access to critical funding was dependent on government agreeing to banks' request to reduce fiscal deficit and substantially modify interest controls. This is another discussion that will definitely be on people's mouths going forward, given the fact that if at all you do have a bank loan and this actually happens by September this year, the cost of servicing that loan will go up significantly. I'd already introduced my news review panel, but let me do so again. Let's begin with the only lady at the table, MP for Gilgil constituency, Martha Wangari. It's good to have you on this panel. It's been a while.
Thank you, Indimuli. It's been quite some time, but I'm happy to be back.
It's good to have you back.
Yeah.
We do have Jonathan Mweke, former Deputy Governor of Nairobi. Mweke, it's also been a while. You've not been on the Power Breakfast panel. I've seen you on other panels, but it's good to have you on this one as well.
Yeah, glad to be back.
Yes, another very familiar face sometime last year, but also disappeared. Chris Wamalwa, MP Kiminini. Karibu sana mheshimiwa.
Asante sana.
The two MPs have just come back from this post-election seminar in Mombasa. Much was said about the seminar, about you guys going on holiday without doing much work.
Really?
Yes, even after being sworn in, apparently you only worked for about a month or less than a month in Parliament before you went on holiday. What exactly was happening in Mombasa? Why a holiday so soon, Martha?
Fred, I really don't think people really understand our work. I think if there is one occupation that is really misunderstood, is the work of a member of Parliament. And I think even in any setup, even in this organization, if you hire new staff, you will have to have a lot of on-job training. That is what we are doing. Because if you look at the turnover in Parliament, not many of us are doing second terms, in fact, or more. It's over 70%.
It is actually your first time in the National Assembly.
Yeah, I'm saying totally in Parliament, and I'm telling you, the turnover is over 70%.
Yes.
So some of these things, you don't call it a holiday because it's in Mombasa. I think it is a non-job training for members, and you had us discuss here just before we went on air, and there were really beneficial trainings that we were talking about. We had the head of judiciary there, we had Muilu represent the judiciary, we had part of the executive, we had external expatriates who had come to speak to us. We were identifying the Zambian speaker for Zambian Parliament, who was a judge. So some of the issues we are dealing with as a country, we have to also borrow from other jurisdictions to be able to tell exactly how do we navigate. Otherwise, we will keep having push and pull like we did in the 11th Parliament, and we won't have much to deliver. So some of these things and some of the knowledge we gained in Mombasa, and consequently in other trainings that are not necessarily in Mombasa, is that we have gotten to know exactly what we need to do, what the National Assembly needs to do, what the Senate needs to do, what the judiciary needs to do, because at the end of the day, the delivery is to Mwananchi, and that is what they are looking for, not our push and pull. And
the other criticism was to NASA MPs. You boycotted a number of parliamentary sessions, parliamentary activities, but then when it came to this particular forum, you were there actively. Kindly explain how that happened, and was it a good time for MPs across the political divide probably to close ranks and start working together?
Yeah, thank you very much, and thank you for welcoming me back to this show. And I think it was a wonderful seminar that we had in Mombasa. And from the NASA coalition, our work is to legislate, to represent, and to oversight. And this was the very good opportunity for us to come together after the post-election the competition, so that we move on as a team. And at no given time did NASA give out a report that we're going to boycott. We've only been boycotting some specific issues. For instance, when it comes to the issues of vetting the cabinet, you know our political party stand, and that's why our team did not participate in terms of the vetting the cabinet for Jubilee, did not participate in vetting the CSS. So really, and they had no business to go and debate because our members did not participate in their respective committees. But now mentioning about the issue of Mombasa, Mombasa, it was like an induction process, particularly for the new members of parliament. You realize that, as Honorable Wangari has clearly put it, about 70% of the legislators are new. So they need to understand the role of a legislature. They need to understand the difference between the parliamentary system and the presidential system. For instance, right now, the current governance we have is a presidential system whereby all members of parliament, you're supposed to oversight government. It doesn't matter whether you're in Jubilee, you must be able to oversight those in the executive. And this is the time we do not have even executive being represented in parliament. So really, it was to give out the role of a legislature under the presidential system. I know we still have hangovers of the parliamentary system, but we're no longer in parliamentary system. We are in presidential system. Again, in the Muli, you've seen that Parliament has been complaining about independence. You saw the Jubilee executive, the way it was interfering of the work of Parliament. You saw the chairs like Alfred Keter, who had been validly elected. The executive came out and really they had to come out in full to ensure that these people are no longer the chairs of the respective committees. They were even going to an extent of de-whipping them. So we're asking ourselves, what is the independence of Parliament? We have three arms of government. We have the judiciary.
Are you saying that this conference managed to shed off or try to counter that kind of influence from the executive?
It was not a counter. You know, as I said, it's an induction. It was an induction process, so that people can be able to know the limits of interference. You know, we had to learn from other jurisdictions, and we had a judge, like the judge and the speaker of Zambia. He had to come and share experiences in terms of the independence of the three arms of government. Because in this country, we've seen many people, particularly from the Jubilee side, they've been complaining on the interference from the executive. So really,
I don't know why you speak for us.
No, but it's been in the public domain.
Where?
Alfred Keter, who was the chair of...
What parties have been interfering with the independence of Parliament?
We've not seen NASA interfering.
Really?
You've not seen NASA interfering.
You guys
It was a decision that was made.
Okay.
So really here, we need to also understand the relationship between the judiciary, the executive, and the legislature.
But it
We've
appears
seen
you
many
still have a lot
times...
of issues to discuss across the political divide, because you don't seem to agree.
No, we don't. Because
No. The issue
you
is this.
can't speak for Jubilee.
You know, Honorable Wangari Maathai, not Wangari Maathai, Honorable Wangari, Martha Wangari. She's a very good legislator. And she knows the forces are there. She's supposed to have been a chair of the committee, but unfortunately the powers that be, she don't please them.
Okay.
And so she can't dare.
Let's move now into the headlines.
We need to move, because but you can't let that go, because
you get an opportunity to
Honorable
respond to
Chris can really speak for us. And I think if there are any people who have been applying this selectively, it is NASA. They join in where they want to join in, and when they are whipped outside by their so-called principals, they cow down, they say they have withdrawn, yet they are even in the committees. As we vetted the ambassadors, they were in the committee.
I'm not aware
Then
about
you say, we won't vet the CSAs, therefore Jubilee.
Wow.
You are talking about the same government. And I want to say, when you say the executive has de-whipped, where does executive come in? You have just said they don't sit in parliament.
Jonathan Mweke is very interested in listening to MPs, and we could go on and on listening to them and their banter. But one thing that